Hello everyone and happy Thursday. First of all, it feels so good to be back doing a video again. It's been quite a while since I've posted anything on this channel, and the reason being is during the FTX mess, I just really didn't want to get involved with that. I felt like there was a lot of misleading information coming out of different places, and I didn't want to speculate on anything. Once we found out that it was just complete fraud, one of the biggest examples of fraud in the history of cryptocurrency, and actually quite mind-boggling that Sam Bankman-Fried was able to get away with that for so long, I just didn't really feel the need to say anything. I think that, it was very self-explanatory what happened. I think that, when you have a lot of money flowing around, and we had a major bull market in cryptocurrency in 2021 and part of 2020, FTX just made so much money, and particularly Sam Bankman-Fried, the amount of influence, the amount of power that comes with that, I really, at a certain point, I think he was lying to himself, and I think that he didn't even realize how bad the situation was if it was to all unfold. So, when there's situations like that, I just don't think it's a good representation of anything to do with cryptocurrency, so I don't think it really needs to be talked about. Now, the funny thing about it is that, crypto was kind of, ever since the 2022 bear market and prices going down, people stopped talking about it completely. And then this FTX scandal was the one thing that all the major news media outlets started talking about it. It became mainstream again, which I think is so hilarious because it's, again, like, that is what is representing this space. And it's so sad that, like, that's the face of it. That's what is making national news. That's what people are actually, just normal people who don't pay too much attention to it. That's what they're seeing, and that's what they're interpreting as a representation of what's happening within the whole cryptocurrency space. And I actually had someone very close to me, family in fact, ask me straight up, hey, did you have anything in FTX? And when someone asks you something like that, the immediate reaction is like, have you watched any of my videos? Have you listened to me talk about anything? I wouldn't keep funds on Coinbase, let alone FTX. I'm very serious about self-custody and all of those things. But then after that initial reaction, I stopped. And it was an interesting moment because I think that even for people who have done a little bit of digging into cryptocurrency, they understand the decentralization aspect, they understand just a few different concepts about it. And by the way, this person is a savvy investor, someone who pays attention to the market, someone who, not an investing novice by any means. So even a person like that still fails to understand that FTX is not a representation of cryptocurrency, and especially of Bitcoin. I think that's really something that needs to be hammered home, is that people are talking about this as though Bitcoin is fraudulent, as though Bitcoin has had this massive collapse from the top. FTX has nothing to do with Bitcoin. FTX had a lot of Bitcoin and they lost it because they had to sell it at a loss after they basically had to, sell the entire company as a fire sale. But when you're talking about Bitcoin and what it is and what it's trying to accomplish and just the overall pillars of what makes it such a hard asset, it has nothing to do with an exchange that took advantage of its own customers. And again, there's just, you guys know this, there's literally no relationship between FTX and Bitcoin. But I think there's still a little bit of a misunderstanding in, the general public of what cryptocurrency actually is, how it differs from Bitcoin specifically, what makes Bitcoin different than the rest of crypto. And when they hear all of this FTX information, they're thinking that the entire cryptocurrency space is on fire, which is funny because when you think about like normal investing, there is fraud all the time. I mean, you could talk about Theranos, about Enron, like you could go back to Bernie Madoff even. If 2008 didn't happen, Bernie Madoff would have kept that going at least for a little bit longer. Fraud exists in financial markets all the time within investing. And whenever that happens within the traditional markets, you don't hear people say, oh my God, the entire stock market is fraud. The entire stock market is collapsing. The entire stock market is completely fraudulent. But that's essentially what happened with this FTX scenario. FTX collapsed. Sam Bankman-Fried probably should be in prison, but pretty much got bailed out. We'll still see what happens with that. But everyone's looking at that as a collapse of the cryptocurrency industry rather than a case of fraudulent behavior, of complete fraud. So I've been thinking about how I want to come back on here and what I want to talk about. And specifically today, with Bitcoin rising over $25,000 for the first time in 6 months, it really feels good for all of the long-term hodlers out there that have just been playing the patience game, maybe even scooping up some cheap Bitcoin at 16,000. But really, we shouldn't be too distracted with this move upwards, because if we take a magnifying glass to it, within 5 years or whatever, we're probably not even going to remember what this move was. I think this is just a bounce back from the FUD we had last week related to regulatory issues with cryptocurrency. So what I want to do is I want to talk more about Bitcoin specifically and what makes Bitcoin different than cryptocurrency, because this is, again, I just feel like people gave up on this so quickly, and I think there were so many people out there just like expecting it all to collapse. People that had the pre-existing idea that cryptocurrency was a house of cards and it was just a matter of time. So again, people are lumping Bitcoin into cryptocurrency as a whole. They still are not focusing on the differences between Bitcoin and crypto, which drives me mad. But maybe this is something I can do to help kind of highlight those differences, because again, I think that Bitcoin is a very different asset than the rest of cryptocurrency. I think cryptocurrency, for the most part, you're basically going to a casino. You're guessing on which ones are going to pop and which ones are going to have the biggest moves. Now, it should be said that when Bitcoin goes up, the rest of crypto usually follows. You don't really see a lot of scenarios where Bitcoin goes up and the rest of crypto goes down, at least yet. I think eventually that will happen in a big way. But at the same time, like, you don't know which ones are going to have the biggest moves. You don't know which ones are going to get left behind. They're not completely lockstep with each other as far as the entire cryptocurrency industry. So then people start focusing on, okay, well, what could be the next Bitcoin? What made Bitcoin the number one cryptocurrency, the most valuable? And what are these other coins that could potentially be the one that overtakes that? As you guys know, I don't think that'll ever happen. I think Bitcoin will be number one in market cap forever. I just don't think that any of these other coins are going to last long term. But that's just an opinion. I don't know that for a fact. And at the end of the day, we're all just kind of guessing at what's going to happen based on the information we have in the present. So I want to focus more on what makes Bitcoin different than cryptocurrency and why is that important? Because there will be another Bitcoin bull run. There will be another crypto bull run. As much as I hate to admit that, all of these other altcoins are going to follow. That's just what happens every time there starts to be a little bit of a hype cycle with Bitcoin. And maybe it's happening now. I'm not going to say that for sure yet, because again, I think this is just a reaction to the fact that Bitcoin was down to $16,000. I mean, to me, that is such a mind-blowing, undervalued position. $16,000 for a Bitcoin. And it was all driven by this FTX scenario, and maybe not all driven, there was other things. This has happened over the course of the last 4 months or so, so it wasn't completely the FTX, but let's be honest, that was the most important thing driving the price movements, because that was the biggest thing in the national news cycles, even international news cycles. So I want to get back to the basics, because I think where I kind of went astray here on this channel, at least within what I wanted to be presenting, is that I would get so angry when people would only want me to talk about altcoins. You know, it was like, Bitcoin's not moving fast enough, 45% over the past 3 months is not that exciting. I want to find the next Dogecoin, I want to find the next Shiba Inu. And I guess I understand, I have to look at it from a factor of like, people have that FOMO. They have the idea that, oh, I didn't get into Bitcoin when it was $300. So now that it's in the thousands, in the tens of thousands, I'm too late. But I've really tried to drive that home, that you're not even close to too late. We're at $24,000 for a Bitcoin. I still think that is just so undervalued. It's unbelievable. It's the most undervalued asset in the world. I really, really believe this, because I think when it's all said and done, it will be something that people use to store value over time, much like a savings account, much like a long-term bonds ETF or something like that. Just something that you can absolutely count on. No matter the fluctuations of the market, no matter the mood out there at the current time in the markets, you know that Bitcoin will be more valuable in 5, 10, 15, 20 years than it is right now. And that's what people need to focus on more. It drives me crazy that people get so emotional about all of these moves. And I get it. Going from $69,000 all the way down to $16,000 is a very scary thing for someone who's not familiar with those kind of moves. But guess what? The rest of the market went down too. And if you were investing in the S&P 500, that means that you were very heavily investing in tech stocks. And guess what? Tech stocks had some major down moves. We're talking 87, 88% over a 12-month time span. There were even some examples like Carvana that almost completely lost all their value. Peloton as well. Just complete collapses of the stock's value in ways that I really would only think you'd see in an altcoin. But again, crypto's too volatile, it's too scary, it's too speculative, whatever you want to call it. all investing is speculative. That's what investing is. You're speculating on the value of what you're going to see in the future. It's speculative. That's what investing is. It's just, I gotta try to calm down here because that really gets me heated sometimes. But I think it's important to just have a good mindset of the fact that, again, if you look at the future, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, do you think Bitcoin will be more valuable than it is right now? I happen to think yes, because I've seen it happen already. Bitcoin used to be $3. Now after that first major bull run, we were talking about the hundreds. Then we were talking about the thousands. Now we're talking about the tens of thousands. Eventually, we're going to be talking about the hundreds of thousands and the millions. I completely, with all my heart, believe this because it's just simple math and logic at the end of the day. If something is scarce, it will become more valuable over time, as long as it serves a purpose. Because at the end of the day, it is true that if something just doesn't have any value, it's not going to grow in value. But I truly believe the core principles of Bitcoin, what it's trying to achieve, the fact that it doesn't have a single CEO, a single controlling entity that can decide what happens with it, it's one of the most decentralized assets that has ever existed. And I think that, how do I say this? I think that people don't really get it yet. I still think that there's still such a massive FOMO around the fact that you either want to get into Bitcoin before it's too late, or you want to try to find the next Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's just too far along now. That's what I hear a lot from people too, which, again, I try to explain this to people, but it just doesn't seem to resonate, because I think probably when you think about like investing in tech stocks, the last big boom within the economy was tech stocks, the tech bubble, and then eventually the life-changing gains that people had if they got into Microsoft, Apple, you name it. I think that was an example of like, oh, you did have to find the next boat, because if Apple and Microsoft were already gone, you had to hop on to Netflix. And if Netflix is already gone, you had to hop on to Zoom, and you could go on and on with that. But cryptocurrency is not exactly like that, because there are likely a lot of cryptocurrencies that have absolutely no value. And we don't know that yet because they're still in the hype cycle, but it'll all come crashing down at a certain point, and that's going to be a very, very ugly scene. So Bitcoin has stood the test of time. Make of that what you will. Some people still think that it's on borrowed time and eventually it's just going to get outdated by a better technology. But at the end of the day, it's not even really about technology. It's just about the core principles. So that's what I want to start doing on this channel, just talking about the core principles of Bitcoin, why I believe that the core principles make this asset incredibly valuable. And right now, it is the most undervalued asset in the entire world. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. I know it's been a while. If you are interested in my travel channel, I always have the link in the description as well. That is what I've been mostly focusing on. But I think now, since we're kind of taking a break from the travel with the winter and everything, I think this is a good time to dive back into just Bitcoin, the core principles, because if people are watching videos about Bitcoin now, I really do think that those are the people that are going to be around for the long haul, because it has been a very brutal year and a half. If you have anything to do with Bitcoin or crypto, a lot of people are, very lucky in the fact that they got in very early. $100, $1,000, even $10,000 at this point would be pretty early. But there are also people that, I have to think about this when I'm talking about it. I have to respect the fact that there are people that probably bought at 55,000, 60,000 plus, and they've seen an incredible amount of value lost over the last year or so. So those people are probably thinking, well, what the heck, am I ever going to be able to break even? That's what they're thinking about. They're not even thinking about where it's going to go in the way future, $300, $400 million. I'm very excited about this new chapter. I'm really excited to just get back into the flow of putting these videos together and having conversations with people that are interested in this, because I think for a long time, it's again this hype cycle thing where once it got to like $55,000, $60,000 and the rest of the altcoins were rising too, that is when people started coming to me, and I'm sure you, if you've been in crypto long enough, and started saying, hey, like, should I get into this? Is this the time? That was not the time, clearly. The time was to buy when it was $8,000, but nobody was interested back then. So that's what it is like, I'm still very proud of the fact that my most viewed video I've ever done is my dollar cost averaging video. I'm a huge proponent of dollar cost averaging, just meaning that you buy every week, every day, whatever you can handle as far as the risk factor. And that way you're getting all prices. So you don't really have to worry about timing it right. You don't have to worry about buying at the perfect time, because that is one of the most searched phrases on Google is what's the best time to buy Bitcoin? Well, the truth is no one knows that because no one knows exactly what's going to happen in the future. So probably the best thing, if you are interested in Bitcoin, and again, do your own research, don't listen to just what I say, don't listen to what one person says. You have to decide for yourself if this is an asset you want to invest in. But if you make that decision, I really do think the best time to buy is every day. And I think that if you get too bogged down with the price movements from day to day, you're going to lose sight of the bigger picture. And that's it. That's always been my mentality. So I'm excited to get back into the swing of things. Thank you so much for watching, and see you very soon.